In Tuesday, on Tuesday, at Tuesday. How do you know which preposition to use in English? Hello and welcome to another lesson on OET grammar. I'm Sharon and I'm so happy you've joined us today. Today we're going to look at prepositions of time. But before we start, let me remind you to click the subscribe button to subscribe to our channel. So what are prepositions of time? These are the little words that will help you specify a particular time in your writing or speaking. Some examples of these words are in, on, and at. So why are prepositions of time so important in OET? Well, in your writing especially, you'll probably need to use them very often to describe a series of events, such as a patient's first, second, or third visits. Prepositions of time also place a time stamp on progression of a patient's symptoms or when certain treatments were administered to a patient. We'll look at more examples later. Right now, let's look at the first preposition. It's in. So we'll use the preposition in when we talk about months or years. It's a period of time with a name, such as in January 2020, or in March, or in 1990. So we'll think of in as describing, say, a container of days, which we can pick out a specific day and refer to it. In March, in 1990. Okay. Many times, though, when we're talking about a container of days and we're not specific as to when it happened, or maybe when it happened isn't important, we'll still use in, but we'll add the article the. For example, in the spring. Something happened in that period of time, but we don't know when, or maybe when it happened isn't important. We're not using a specific day, so we say in the spring, in the winter. Okay, we also add the for parts of the day, such as in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. Again, the specific time something happened isn't important. There is an exception though, of course, always exceptions in English. When something happened at night, we say at night. It's just an expression we just have to remember. It's not in night, it's at night. Okay? It's also common to say in the past or in the future. Remember, we need the article the when we want to talk about a certain period of time, but we don't need to be specific. Maybe we don't know the specific time something happened, or that time is not important. Okay, let's look at the second preposition of time, on. On is used for days. When we talk about a specific day of the week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc., we use on, such as on Monday, on Tuesday, and so on. When we talk about a particular date with the day included, we'll still use on, such as on April 2nd or on March 17th, 2020. Remember that if the day isn't present but only the month is mentioned, we have to use in, like we discussed previously, in October, in November, in March, etc. So for OET especially, the preposition on is usually used to refer to specific days when the actual day is not mentioned. For example, on his initial visit, on admission, on today's review, and so on. The next preposition of time is at. When referring to specific times on the clock, we'll use at, such as at 3 o'clock or at 2:20. And remember, we also use at to say at night. For example, he should not drive at night. If we're talking about a particular time and we want to refer to it again, we can use an expression at that time. For instance, we might say, I met him 2 years ago. At that time, he was still single. This could be an expression you'll use often in your OET speaking or writing. Mrs. Jones came to my office on Monday. At that time, she was complaining of headaches. Now, those three prepositions are the most common ones you'll come across in OET. Or rather, they're the most common ones you'll use in your OET letter. Let's take it a little farther now and add a category called no prepositions needed. Okay? There's sometimes stamps, as we call them, where you don't need to use a preposition, such as the word yesterday. We can't say, I saw him in yesterday or at yesterday. It's just, I saw him yesterday. The same is true for today and tomorrow. We don't say, I saw him in today or I saw him at tomorrow. It's just yesterday, today, and tomorrow. I do need to add a word of caution here though. If you use the word visit, then we do need to say on. Here's an example. On yesterday's visit, he was feeling well. If we use the word visit with yesterday, today, or tomorrow, we do need to use the preposition on to go with it. A few more time references that don't need a preposition would be last, this, or next. So we'll say last month, not on last month, or we'll say this year and not at this year. And we'll say next week, not in next week. Now let's look at some OET examples to go with these. Why don't you try them first and then we'll discuss it together. Here's the first one. That's right, 2011 is a container of days with a name. We have Mr. Jones was diagnosed with diabetes in 2011. You can also take time to repeat the sentences after me for a little speaking practice. Here's the next one. Two references to a specific day, so we need the preposition on. Mrs. Banks first experienced shortness of breath on March 17, 2020, and her symptoms continued to worsen until her admission to the A&E on March 18, 2020. Good. Here we go with number 3. This is the expression that we talked about. That's an exception to the rule, at night. His cough gets worse at night. All right, here's number 4. We're talking about a month with a name that is a container of days, so we need the preposition in. In October 2018, Ms. Carlisle was reviewed by a dietitian. Here's number 5. Now we have a specific time on the clock, so we need the preposition at. At 4 o'clock today, pethidine 100 milligrams was administered to Mrs. Lee. Here's number 6. Now we're talking about a specific day, so we need on. On December 12, 2019, Ms. Carlisle was reviewed by a dietitian. Number 7. In this one, we're referring to a specific time when the date or the time is not mentioned. So we need on. On admission, Mr. Kimberly's blood pressure was 140/90. Finally, here's the last one. So in the first blank, remember, we don't use prepositions with this, next, or last. And the second blank here, we're talking about a time we've already mentioned. So we need the expression at that time. Mr. Brown first presented this morning with the complaint of diarrhea and vomiting. At that time, he was severely dehydrated. I hope today's lesson has helped you understand more about when to use these 3 prepositions of time: in, on, and at. You'll find more OET grammar presented by Benchmark Education Solutions here on YouTube. And you might want to check out our website at edubenchmark.com for more on the OET. We have courses, articles, and services which will help you with your exam. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe.